Oh, I see. And we'll just wait another second. Hey, Barbie. That's my lady. Nice that she's here. Mom is here. Sam is here. Awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna pull up the real time clock while we're just letting people roll in for a moment. Just see what's going on right now in the skies. Anything interesting? Hey, yeah, thank you. I'm so excited. I love what we're doing here. It's so great. I'm checking out that real time clock right now on my computer over here. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this is my Ganesha. I'll move aside for a moment here. You can see him. I've been bringing this thing with me everywhere I move since, gosh, I don't know. It's probably since I lived in Colorado in the late 90s, maybe even before that. But yeah, he usually goes with me everywhere I go, and he just goes up on the wall somewhere. So he's been my backdrop for my readings and such for a while. Um, Great. Hey, Jen, thanks for your comment too. Awesome, awesome. Well, as we're letting people roll in here, I'm going to just chant very briefly to this fellow behind us, who in Hinduism he's one of the one of the gods, right? So one of the many representatives of all that is, and they take many faces. So in Hinduism, often you chant to Ganesha at the beginning of an endeavor. So you're about to go on a trip, you're about to, I don't know, open a new business, you're going to do your first live stream. You might want to chant to Lord Ganesh, and he's going to help to hopefully bless your endeavor, remove any obstacles hopefully that might be in the way of success. So it's considered very auspicious to do that. If you listen to like CDs that will have some of this kind of kirtan and Hindu music, a lot of times the first song will be to Ganesha, or if you go hear like a kirtan where people are singing these devotional songs, the first one might be to Lord Ganesha. So yes, awesome, awesome. So I'm just going to chant this 9 times real quick, and we're basically just honoring God and all that is, but in this case, in the form of Ganesh. And he is also connected with astrologers as well. He's said to be the lord of the categories, and of course, astrology. We sort of look at all the categories of existence, the way we can kind of break them down and see how they combine with each other. So that's an interesting piece of Lord Ganesh as well. Satnam. All right. So I'm going to say Om, which is the beginning of all these mantras, which is the sound of creation, right? That connects everything. So it's sort of this infinite sound. And then Gum is kind of a seed mantra for Ganesh. So it's just like a really short version of Ganesh in a mantra form. Ganapatiye, that's what we're talking about, Ganesh. And the Namaha is a salutation. So that's like we're bowing before this. We're honoring this. We're bowing to this. So there it is. All right. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. 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 All right, guys, thank you for bearing with me. And so it looks like we can take some calls in. I think it's a bit early, Marcy, for me to accept that. But there is a way for you guys. At some points, we might want to have you like sort of call in, and it'll either be video or just audio. And then if it's just audio, we'll just hear you along with me. And if it's video, it'll show your little picture, and then you can also speak as well. But I'm going to say to Marcy, thank you for that. I'm going to say later to that. Yeah. So that's a way that we can do that. But I think we're going to just kind of chat for a while, just probably chat, generally for a while before I invite anyone that might want to speak. So we might have some time here for people that want to maybe have like a little quick, look at something. Because I'm going to be talking about something and I'm going to be saying a lot of things about it. And to be honest, I like to show the thing more than I like to just talk around it. But it's also important to talk around some things and set some things up. So we may get into the nitty gritty, which is where I, like to do a lot of my work and just kind of really see how things work live. So yeah, there might be some of y'all that we could pull up. I've got my computer over here, so I might be able to pull up your stuff. And for example, I think something it might be interesting if we have time at the end. Like if you're in a place, right, and you're not sure, do I want to stay here? Do I not want to stay here? Like I might be able to just look at it and I can tell you what I think about it, and you can tell me what I said that was correct, what I said that was incorrect, and it's not a big deal if I'm incorrect. Please tell me, right? We all want to learn, and that's part of it. But I've there's another group that I speak to. There's like this online kind of metaphysical school that I speak to sometimes, and when they have me speak, I usually do these rapid fire readings where it's like maybe 10 minutes per person, and we go through and do a ton of them. And it's really fun because I would say overall that I tend to be very accurate. People tend to say, "Wow, yeah, that makes sense." And so I don't know. I love showing stuff. But this is the first time I'm doing one of these too. So we'll hopefully have other live streams and I'll have other opportunities to, check in with you guys and look at how some of this stuff works. So this might be a little more general tonight. We'll see. We'll see how we get toward the end there. Just trying to get the stream working. Marcy said. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know if you're having any issues with that. If y'all don't mind, if you want to just write into the comments. Yeah, so Marcy, you're here, right? You can see me and hear me, I think. Um, if you want to, write in the comments your basic background in astrology, sort of beginner, advanced, professional, newbie, Vedic, Western, whatever, and also locational. Like, how much do you feel like you're comfortable with locational / astrocartography? Hey, Eddie or Edie, but I know who you are. Thank you. And just feel free to write. I'm a professional in Vedic astrology, but I know nothing about locational astrology, or whatever the case might be. It just give me a little better idea of where you guys are at, and then I might be able to kind of speak to that a little better. So awesome, very good. So yeah, I'm going to be reading these as they come in here. So as you guys are writing that out, anyone who wants to share that is great. So I call my work holistic astrology. It's kind of my branding, I suppose. That's my term for what I do. And Marcy says no sound. Okay, oh, that's too bad. Oh well. I'm just reading these comments. It's great. Let me see if I could read that one there. Okay, great. Oh, from Brazil. Awesome. Okay. So holistic astrology is kind of the system that has kind of evolved out of everything I've done in astrology now for nearly 30 years. And I started with Western astrology pretty quickly. I got curious about Vedic astrology. Pretty quickly after that, I got really curious about locational astrology. And so I've really been, diving into how to sort of integrate all these things, throughout that time. And it feels like something has emerged out of that it kind of reminds me of how sculptors will say that there's like a statue in the stone, right? And they're trying to reveal the statue in the stone. It's like over time I've found a thing that felt like it was almost there all along, and it's kind of really neat to see how you chisel away at something for a while, and then there's like this thing there. um, and I do sort of pride or take pride in the fact that my work is very empirical. I have a lot of actual experience working with clients, so there's about best estimate is about 20,000 or so places where people have actually lived there, and they sent me notes on what it was like to live in those places, and I was able to look at all the influences, ask them questions about them. If something didn't make sense, I could ask them, wait a minute, I would have thought this. Does that not make sense? And then they might say, oh, actually, yeah, that does. Or. So I've actually done that, which is a little unusual. And I'm very proud of that, I suppose, because I think, this should be an empirical thing. It should be replicable. In other words, the things that we come up with, I should be able to give you that information, and you should be able to get the same results that I do, using the same sort of things, right? So, and I through all of that, I wanted to find, well, is this like that? Does this work that accurately? Is it that consistent? And I think given the right amount of careful measuring and balancing and weighing of all the things you have to look at, which takes a little while to figure out for sure. I think there is a lot that you can understand about it. Holistic astrology is based on, if I have sort of an initial sort of set of principles, like in evolutionary astrology, right? They have a number of like sort of statements that they take to be true, right? Sort of a 10 commandments or something, right? So what I have for holistic astrology is literally 6 words. So You know, Mark Twain, you know, famously wrote, you know, I'm sorry, you know, something to the effect of, you know, I'm sorry I couldn't write you a shorter letter. If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. So brevity is where it's at, right? So anyway, the key terms I like to come back to a lot are curiosity, and you can kind of go around the mutable signs, and you'll see how these kind of end up lining up with the mutable signs. So starting with Gemini here, so curiosity, flexibility, humility, precision, passion, and compassion. So that's my manifesto. That's it. Those 6 words, and you get to play with them. So and we get to play with them. So that's about as dogmatic as I want to believe that I get. That those are all important things, you know. Now I'm going to go back and read a number of things that I have not heard yet, or have not read yet from you guys. Okay. So sorry to lose Marcy there. She maybe didn't have her sound up. Let's see here. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Welcome, welcome. I'm reading about everyone that's sharing their sort of background in astrology in general and locational astrology in general. Oh, that's cool. So Andrea said she's been studying since she was 12. She got a reading from me in person before she moved from California to New Orleans, and she's loving it here. Thank you. That is the coolest thing to hear. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Lots of personal experience with Natal. Okay. Nice, nice. Your Venus line. All right. Yep. Okay. Yeah, Lily mentioned that I don't know how much I should or shouldn't share about what you had shared with me, but there were some real issues where she had come from that were very, very clear, and they were similar for her and her kid. And so that was one reason I felt like she was in a better spot, because where she had come from had some really serious issues, and those did seem to resonate as far as what I was identifying there. Oh, awesome, awesome. Got a reading with somebody here next week. I did, by the way, make some space on my calendar, my availability through this app. So if you ever want to get a reading from me, encourage you to do it through this app. I'd love to support AstroStar, and you know they get paid obviously some of it when you do it that way. And so you're moving in 3 weeks, yeah. So if you move in 3 weeks, you know I think some people ask me sometimes like, is it useful to get a reading if I know I'm already going to move somewhere? Sometimes people are like, oh, I've decided to move into Seattle anyway. I probably don't need a reading. And I actually feel like it's still very, very useful, because we can look at that and I can say, well, I think it's like this. And if I'm right, then that might be really useful information. Because let's say it's not so good, then you might want to realize that sooner or later. Like if I say, I think this place is actually quite difficult for these reasons, and if those things turn out to be true in your experience, then it might help you realize sooner that maybe that's not where you want to be, or maybe you want to work with those somehow. Maybe you want to understand how to work with those or accept working with those in a certain way. And we can kind of come up with strategies. There's always a strategy for something that's difficult. Doesn't mean it takes away the difficulty, but you can work with it better, you know? Um, so it's still very useful to look at where you are. What does it seem to offer you? Like, what is the opportunity of that place, right? What are the challenges? How does it all come together, right? We're trying to see the whole picture, you know? So I still think it's really neat to look at places where you live, and it might also give you some perspective on like where you're at. Like maybe you live in a place where your social life is going to be more difficult than the average place, and you might want to go, oh well, maybe that's like just kind of where I'm at. Maybe that's kind of the limitation of this place for me, and that might be nice to know. You know, okay, well, maybe this isn't just me. You know, maybe this has something to do with where I am. So there's a lot of things you can kind of get out of that, right? Aha. Now you're on a Saturn square ascendant line. Okay, so we'll just jump right into something. I don't normally put it in that way, and a lot of people do. But is it squaring the ascendant from the top of the chart or the bottom of the chart, right? So is Saturn in the zodiac, is it behind the ascendant, near the top, right around the 10th, or is it below, near the 4th? So that's a question for ANS here. I think your name was it Ashley? I think you commented. Well, yeah, I know you commented. It's in the third house. Okay. So okay. So Ashley, so here's what Ashley's saying, right? So, no, and now how tight is the aspect? Do you know, Ashley? Like what is the ascending degree where you are, and what is your Saturn degree? If you know that, let me know. Because it really depends. This is one of the things that's was quite surprising to me to discover, is how sensitive some of the things are. And yeah, it really matters, right? If it's the same degree, it matters a whole different way than if it's like 3 degrees or if it's 5 degrees. So you may or may not know that, but it's quite interesting to consider that. So ANS is going to be perhaps responding to some of that. Okay, I'm reading someone else here. Do I factor in the relocation chart, someone's asked me, or just the lines on the map chart? So awesome question. And I do factor in the relocation chart. In fact, I think the thing I have worked out the best, other than the importance of series, which I'm going to be giving another lecture on series next week in a different environment. It's a Zoom meeting to this evolutionary astrology study group. And I think I'm pretty good at the crossings. I've just really had kind of a real curiosity for those and just seen a bazillion of them and how they tend to work out for people. I think I'm pretty good at those things. But the relocated chart, I think, really is where I have something very significant that I can contribute to this understanding of locational astrology. So when I first started, I would do probably what most of you guys would do, or what anyone would maybe think to do. Like, okay, I'm moving, like I moved from Athens, Georgia, where I was going to school, to Boulder, Colorado. So to figure out, hey, what might this be like, I relocated my chart to Boulder, Colorado. So that's a way of saying the same moment I was born, I was actually born in New Jersey. So little baby Moses draws his first breath in the afternoon in New Jersey in 1975. What was going on in these other places? So what would my chart have been if I had been born in Boulder? Which is another way of saying what was the chart around Boulder, right, when I was born? Like, what were those people experiencing in that very moment? So it's as if you're born and there's like this frozen moment in time, and there's all these snapshots, all these like a grid of possibilities that's set up everywhere. So Boulder is this where I would have had, if I had been born there instead. But it was actually occurring there. It was literally occurring there in that very moment. So it's kind of neat. There's an as above, so below thing here. So that's a relocated chart. Those charts are extremely important. They're not really a part of astrocartography. Like Jim Lewis did not really, he talked about them slightly, but it wasn't a part of astrocartography as he taught it. He taught you about the ACG lines on the map and the parens and what he called cyclocartography, which is where the transits and progressions moving around, that place at that time. And that's what he did. And it is a brilliant but incomplete system. Definitely, definitely. I love Jim Lewis. He was brilliant. I wouldn't be doing anything that I'm doing without him. But definitely there's more than that. And for example, Michael Erlewine came up with local space. And local space is another concept, which is also very simple. I love how simple and real the things are that I have found work very well. And maybe that's part of why they work very well, because they are so simple and so real. So local space is like this. Let's say you can find the sun in your sky right now. Or let's say it's later where you are and you can find a planet in the sky right now. You could be standing right where you are, and you could point your finger at that thing, sun or moon or whatever it is, and you could draw a circle around the Earth in that direction and come right back where you started, right? That's local space, and it's actually what direction were the planets, oriented toward your birthplace at your birth time. And those lines are also very powerful. So that was not a part of astrocartography at all. So anyway, back to the relocated chart. I feel this is, and I teach all my students this, I demonstrate it over and over. It is amazing how well this sort of thing works. I basically have a way of helping you to quantify and understand exactly which parts of the relocated chart are most active and most powerful, and to what degree. Which parts of that chart are in the foreground, which parts are in the background, and to what degree are they emphasized or not. And it works like absolute clockwork. It simply works, and it's based on such a lot of simple things and really simple math, which is why I think it kind of has to work. You can't argue with simple math, and there is a lot of simple math that we haven't really quite understood how to implement yet. So for example, in astrocartography, we're typically looking at the angles, the ascendant, the descendant, the midheaven, the IC. They tend to be connected with 4 different houses: the first, the fourth, the seventh, and the 10th. Well, astrology is very 12 based, 12 signs, 12 houses. So does it sound like we've got a complete system if it's like based on like just 4? I don't think so, and in my research, it's not. It's definitely not. They're 12, and what we haven't collectively figured out, and the only reason I figured this out, by the way, is I just talked to so many people that the examples spoke back. Like it was like for the first aha that I had with this was I had a student in a class, and this was a long time ago. This is probably, I don't know, almost 20 years ago, something like that. Not quite 20, probably, but um, and she was telling this story about this stalker in her life, right? She had this really bad stalker, and I'm looking at her relocated chart. Now I'm using porphyry as the house system primarily. Later, I also added and came to understand the importance of the equal house method as well. An equal house is very simple. It uses the degree of the ascendant as every house cusp, which makes every house 30 degrees wide, starting with the ascending degree, right? So the first house starts past the ascending degree, and then you get that around. And there's a number of traditions and people in astrology that have stressed the emphasis, the importance of that rising degree in each house. If you look at Rob Hand's book on whole sign houses, he speculates it could be that the position of the rising degree in each house is especially sensitive, important, and powerful. There's a Neo-Vedic school called Systems Approach. They say the same thing. They call it the MEP, the most effective point. So this is one of the ways that you understand what is actually super duper important in a place. Anything near your ascending degree in a house is massively important, especially if it's very tight. But porphyry is the other way to make the math really simple. And porphyry basically, and some of you guys, I apologize if this is over some of y'all's heads. I'm going to speak to all different levels here today, and you know, that's what I got to do, I guess. So porphyry, it trisects the quadrants equally. So if you have a house system where the midheaven is the beginning of your 10th house, like Placidus or Coke or Regiomontanus or Porphyry, um, we're going to trisect the quadrants equally. So your 10th, 11th, and 12th houses are all going to be the same width. They might all be like 33 degrees wide or something like that. So those points are also calculated very precisely. These two approaches were actually used quite a bit in ancient astrology. I'm not an expert in ancient astrology, but I see a lot of these discussions, and I see that it turns out the thing I kind of figure out on my own, they're doing a lot with these same things. And I figured it out just because the stories spoke to me and they were kind of obvious. They're right in front of my face, and I was just looking at a lot of them. So anyway, those porphyry cusps or points are just as significant as the equal points. I have, in all my experience, I have yet to discover that one is more important than the other. They are in my experience, completely equally important. So anything near those points, they are like additional angles. In other words, we consider the angles things that are very, very emphasized in a chart. But is it possible to have something emphasized in a fifth house way or in an eighth house way? Yes, there is actually. And it has to do with those points specifically. And there's a way to understand it, there's a way to measure it, there's a way to understand how powerful it is. But if I were to do a reading on a relocated chart and only read the planets on the angles and those specific house cusps within certain orbs, I would basically get it like 90% right, most of the time, and you could almost ignore the other planets. You don't want to ignore them, but you almost could actually, and you would still get all the major stories right, and people would go, yeah, 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 yeah. So anyway, the back to the stalker example. This person has it was some kind of a square between the eighth house and the fifth house, and it may have been the Sun and Pluto. I want to say it might have been in like I think there was some Scorpio involved. I don't recall exactly that particular example, but it was kind of a tough square involving something that involved men, like the sun. I think it was the sun, and it could have been Mars, but it could have been Pluto, it could have been Saturn, but something like that, right? And there's this really tight square from the eighth house cusp to the fifth house cusp. And that is exactly what told the story of this location for her. It wasn't any of the other stuff. It wasn't any of the astrocartography stuff. It wasn't any of the local space stuff. That told the whole significance of that place for the most significant thing. And then this light bulb goes off over my head, and I go, wait a minute, right? And then I start looking for that, and then I realize equal house is just as important as the porphyry cusps. And then next thing I know, I have definitely evolved a different understanding of the relocated chart that's very, very accurate, very replicable. It'll work over and over and over if you apply it the right way. So anyway, yes, I use relocated charts. That was a long answer. All right, I'm going to go back and read some of the comments here. So I did free up some space on my calendar here on AstroStar. I'm making Sundays available more or less for AstroStar folks, and I did include actually this Monday I left open for y'all, and then there's like the Friday the 29th I left open for y'all. Usually I'm booked out like a few weeks or so, give or take, a week or two. So I'm trying to make space and see if we can work with some of that. What degree orbs to use for aspects? A little different for each aspect, so it's a little bit of a longer story, but we could answer that at some point. All right, all right. Oh, thank you very much. All right, all right. So back to ANS as well. Let's get back because I want to get to her example about that square. Because again, I don't really say Saturn squaring your ascendant. It's not that it's untrue. It's not that it's wrong. I think there's a better way to put it. I think there's a more useful way to put it. So let's see. Okay, okay. All right. Just go back. See if I can find ANS. I don't know if she mentioned the degrees or not. I'm still scrolling up and reading for that. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so she's saying her Saturn, 24 degrees. She's saying it's in the third with conjunction to Neptune. Uranus with the ascendant. Okay, so I think that means Saturn is conjunct Neptune and Uranus. And then the ascendant is 22 degrees conjunct Pluto. Okay, yeah, so if I understand that right, which house system do I use? I think I answered that one already. It was porphyry equal house. I also use whole sign houses, and in sidereal, I use whole sign houses, which is what Vedic astrologers typically do. Okay, so this is a pretty tight orb here. Now, let's ignore, I don't know if this Saturn is on the IC or not. I'm guessing it's not because you mentioned it was square to the ascendant, but you didn't mention it was on the IC. Okay, so if you cast an equal house chart, all right, what will happen then is your Saturn is going to be on the fourth house cusp of the equal house chart, because the equal house fourth house cusp will be 90 degrees in front of the ascendant, right, in zodiacal longitude. It'll be 90 degrees ahead. So I'm going to say that it's actually a very fourth house thing. Now, I'm going off of what you're telling me. If I looked at it myself, I might say something a little different, but I think this should be about right. So in other words, rather than saying Saturn is squaring your ascendant, what is more useful to me is to say that Saturn is conjunct your fourth house cusp, which is the equal house, fourth house cusp. It is also square the ascendant, but like that's kind of generic for me, you know, like, and there's a big difference between squaring something from the fourth house cusp and squaring something from the 10th house cusp. Like I have Mercury squaring my ascendant in my birth chart from the 10th house position. So my rising is like 16 Scorpio and Mercury's like 15 Leo. So it's elevated from that point of view, right? It's conjunct the 10th house equal house cusp. Now you could say Mercury square my ascendant. And if you just left it at that, you might just think, oh, well, he's just got a Mercury problem. Maybe, but I think what's more accurate is that I've done pretty well with Mercury stuff throughout my life. My career has always been mercurial. I could give you lots of examples of that. And it's not like a problem. It's actually like good, you know, like because my 10th house is very, very Mercury. It's very, you know, and I could tell you more about that. So it's way more useful to say, oh, okay, this guy has a very 10th house emphasized Mercury placement, and then we can analyze his Mercury, the sign, the aspects, the reception, stars, you know, whatever you want to get into, all the different essential dignities and nakshatras, and there's lots of fun stuff. So I think hopefully that's